Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you find yourself in the world. I'm Mark Nemes, and I'm very, very excited today. And it's fair to say, I'm going to use probably a politically incorrect term. I do have a bit of a man crush on Radek around the things that have been achieved over the period of time. And Max, you and I are so excited to basically have you here. And really, the purpose of a conversation is around the purpose, profit, and health span. What do you do after building $1 billion wellness business? And that's our conversation around today. What if we could build organizations that actually make people healthier and have the evidence to prove it? Not just nice branding and big promises, but measurable shifts in energy, focus, resilience, and yes, our own health span. Our guest today did that at scale. His early years and his time with Swisse is documented really, really well in a great book he's co-written with Bernadette called Building a $1 billion Business. I absolutely recommend this book for anyone who does anything around consumer engagement at scale, especially in the wellness industry. It is a Bible of the hard knocks and the things you need to do to succeed. He also now has an expanding suite of plant-powered supplements with Wanderlust. And you're, I believe, hosting the largest well-being event in the Southern Hemisphere soon on the Gold Coast called Wellspring. He also is in a fortunate position to invest in with his own fund called Light Warrior. He's empathetic, he's engaged. Radek Sali, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I feel like the cacao ceremony I did this afternoon in preparation for our Wellspring event, where we've got a cacao ceremony happening at the event. So the practitioner came out and practiced on Emika, our founder of Loco Love, and her husband, who's the second in charge there, and yeah, we went through the experience today, and I asked for love to drop into my life, and I feel like love's dropped in. So thank you. You're a gem, Mark. Plenty of love back for that wonderful intro.
And with us today is Maxiu. And hello, Maxiu. Nice to see you as well. You're in a remote part of Boston at the moment at 3 o'clock in the morning. So thank you so much for being awake for this and basically in driving this initiative. So HealthSpan knows no time zone.
Yeah, that's it. No, I'm very happy to be here. And then thanks, Radek, for coming along as well. Yeah.
You should have told me 3 there, so we would have made it a different time.
That's okay.
Special.
If we forget, that's fine. I'll just be me and Radek. So I will start by we're really going to tag team hopefully today on the things that drive our passions. I'm very, very passionate about the community, the company, the culture, and your scale up grit. And I know Maxiu is incredibly passionate about the clinical evidence and the science behind what it is you actually do. And I know these are two things that are the pillars of what you do sort of moving forward. And I'll go on record as saying that, you know, the book about your life and the Swisse, what you did at Swisse really goes into the notions of grit, science, sales and marketing, and consumer behavior. And it talks a lot about what I call where your scientific evidence comes from, where corporate culture comes from, and cash flow. And funnily enough, a lot of this started with your mum and dad, who were scientists in this area. Can you allude a little bit about what was it about that basically drove you into this direction?
Yeah, so growing up with a mum that's a medical scientist, a father who's a professor of surgery, PhD, and a number of other letters after his name, he would be studying quite interesting things pretty early on in kind of his career on things like diet and its effect on chronic disease, and he was rejected in the 70s and 80s. That concept was considered mad, particularly a surgeon talking about the fact that, you know, you should be studying proper medicine and fix-it medicine rather than talking about prevention and what prevention could do. He was also looking into things like meditation and its effects in patients dealing with chronic conditions and being able to get through the psychological side of treatment, and then also its benefits too with anxiety and stress. And so he'd come home, and being a professor, he'd lecture to me as a child from a very young age. And my mother, being a scientist, would be the person, measuring the bloods in dad's patients, and making sure that nutrition was right so his patients could fight whatever condition that they were dealing with. So, the foundations of what now makes up functional medicine was something he was practicing 50 years ago, 40 years ago. So pretty incredible stuff. Very blessed to grow up in that environment. But every day was a pandemic in our house. We were talking about health, and Mum was making sure we were eating brown rice and plenty of ginger in there. And I was introduced to a multivitamin as a teenager. And things like zinc to deal with my acne and so forth, and things that I was suspicious of as a what's this nutrition? What are my parents trying to do to me through my adolescence? Are they trying to take something away from me? But they're trying to help, and they also sent me to things like yoga school as a young kid, creative dance, and Japanese ink brush painting, which were all beautiful principles to kind of get your head around as a kid. So it was quite a different upbringing, but overlaid with kind of how do you proof this out in science? How do you proof out what feels great intuitively with clinical trials and more research? So now Dad's published over 300 papers in the area, and I'm sure he's talked to me about the detail of most of them, and if he hasn't, he'll cover them off after hearing this podcast.
With Swisse, effectively, it's almost a culmination of you have the pill that has the answer. Yeah, you have the therapeutic that has part of the answer, and your father was basically, and your parents were telling you, well, the evidence was showing you that that's not enough. There's more there. That's great, but there's a lot more to it holistically. And so I guess my question for you is, have we caught up with your father's science and the input? Like, what is now working and what are we missing in healthspan?
It's a great question, because Dad still leans into the things that frustrates him about what is not considered in this kind of new measurement of health span, and how technology in some ways is enabling more information, but it's also making us less connected with the most important part, the human side, our reality that we are nature, and our connection with nature, connection with other people. And when we're doing things like having that cup of coffee that might help with any sense of new research that's come out, like detoxing the liver, or helping with its polyphenols and so forth, or a cup of tea. Dad said you can't have that by yourself. You got to have it with someone else. So you're venting and kind of getting stuff off your chest and dealing with stress and anxiety. This is part of community and part of the holistic approach. Not one thing works like we like to have in modern science, where this is the drug that will solve your scenario. Well, it just puts a Band-Aid on it. It fixes it for then, but it doesn't get to the cause and why these things are happening. So that's what I think ever frustrates my father in the progression. And I see the same. I probably don't get as frustrated like he does. I look to solve it as an entrepreneur and try and make it more accessible. This kind of, and democratize this kind of notion of managing our health.
Yeah.
And to be fair, there is new papers talking about what we call the hallmarks of aging, which have all the different primary causes, antagonists, and the social interactions have just been included as one of the hallmarks. So I guess more and more we are recognizing that it is so important. And, if you do not have that social side, and that social aspect is linked to so many age diseases, maybe there is hope for all of that your dad is frustrated, and it's finally getting there. But yeah, I love the upbringing story, and how you had all these opportunities that sound so cool. And yeah, it's awesome. And like, being a researcher, I keep telling my kids about oh, you do this, you do that, and they're like, why so I can relate to so many things. So yeah, it's awesome. But I guess like shifting a little bit to the mission. So what was the motivation for you from shifting beyond just like general supplements with Swisse to focusing on biohacking and health span? And the second is, if you were to include one of new chapter in your book around health span companies, what would you add about the evidence and the standards and the trial designs? And I know that Australia is really rigid in all of that.
Yeah, and thank you, Maksud, for being such a rock star, next gen scientist, bringing our medical world into the future of what we are talking about here, this holistic approach, and going beyond just the kind of typical, focused science focused one magic item that will solve it, and that's huge for you. And I love that there's this whole generation of scientists and doctors that are leading the change, and it's exciting for humanity. So that want to get that out of the way, and then on your question. So first of all, was just to back to, was it measurable, and kind of what are the outcomes that most desirable for us to keep focused on? Is that the
Yeah,
guts of what
so
you're?
I guess like from coming from Swisse to Wanderlust, what
Yeah,
was the sort of like, shift to more of the longevity? There is a lot of hype around all of the supplements and, take a lot of things, but I know that there is like standards and, there is trial design. So I just want you to
yeah,
sort of like clarify a little bit on how was this process of
yeah.
the
It,
creation of,
look,
BioHack.
it's a great question. So for me, not much has changed really. It's just the way we market and position things that has changed. So a lot of the ingredients in our BioHack products existed in past Swiss products and didn't actually work at that time because community just wasn't ready for the insight that, say, our yeast extract in our Wellmune product, in a Wellmune ingredient that's in our immune support product, they just weren't ready for that, to pay that premium to really, support, buy a product that had the science to support it. We had so many products that had a heap of science that were just, the consumers were not ready. Like we've done liposomal CoQ10, liposomal glutathione. They were near unmarketable 10, 15 years ago. Now, because people are talking about them and the importance of bioavailability, the importance of science, it's great that we can go back to the future and bring these products out, and they are getting traction. So we're seeing this shift to the consumer wanting more information about the product they're taking and why they're taking it, and what it will do for them, and what's the science supporting it. And we built our Swisse off the back of two multivitamins, the men's and women's multivitamin, and formulating slightly differently for the needs of females and the needs of males, and then built a whole lot of science around cognition, and other measures, bioavailability and so forth, with Swinburne University and some others as well, and that was all really important stuff. But and it kind of separated us from the an entry level vitamin, which was Centrum's multivitamin at that point. And even that multivitamin was shown to improve the length of people's telomeres. Now you would know what that means, but the general public are probably just catching up to knowing what that can mean and how it can affect health and affect our genes the right nutrition.
So coming back to your example of the cup of coffee, Radek, you said, hey, we've seen some good outcomes, clinical benefits to you of coffee, right? And then, of course, there'll be some other study that'll say it does something bad for you or whatever. But what's interesting, what you've really articulated there, is the coffee on its own might have a slight benefit for you in this way, but the coffee with the conversation, even if the coffee doesn't work, the conversation itself is providing you a benefit that basically goes with the coffee. Could be a tool. Both of them together, there's correlation as opposed to causation, but they're correlated together. There is a real outcome for you around community. And what I'm sort of picking up is the detail that you had already 15, 20 years ago, what wasn't deemed sort of relevant or wasn't acknowledged now, whereas now people are saying, oh, actually, that is relevant to this. I will have turmeric lattes or whatever, but a turmeric latte isn't on itself going to basically make you live longer, but in concert with all of these other things, it probably, it's a contributing factor.
And I think setting the intention setting the intention of doing something right by yourself. It's
Yep.
almost be having gratitude for your body by choosing to do something ceremonial or healthy around that.
Yep.
And part of that is conversation, or choosing a decaf coffee if you caffeine doesn't agree with you, knowing
Yep.
when it agrees with you, doing a DNA test. These things are not expensive to do. Get some measures of how your body performs with various nutrition. Go and see a doctor that tests your nutrition levels and tells you what supplements you should be taking. There are great doctors that can do this stuff. But do your research. Find people that are interested in this area, that are learned and have studied the area, and we'll find and go that little bit step further and give you information on how you can proactively look after this majestic machine that is our body.
Yeah, I love this. You're going right down my alley where, I keep constantly nagging and saying, don't just take things, but measure it, because otherwise, one, you're not gonna know if it's working, and second, it might be actually doing harm. So I guess like this leads really well to sort of like my follow-up question. There's so many products from BioHack. There's creatine, there's magnesium, there's omega-3s, there's the polyphenols that you mentioned. So we all know that they all have benefits, but is there any sort of like trials that have looked into the combinations of those different supplements by Wanderlust, or what is the research that you guys have done before creating all of those products? And I guess, like, is there like a smart, ethical sort of like way where people should be taking those? And what is the due diligence, you would say? Like, you already mentioned going to the doctors and all of those things, but is there like measurable things that you have found during the development of all of this that you would like to highlight, that you could highlight?
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinarily difficult to measure every outcome of nutrition against the
Mm.
platitude, very things that we eat, stress, whatever's going on in someone's life. So for me, I'm always cycling through I've got my Aura ring, and I'll wear that for a month so I don't become obsessive about it. And I'll go back to it, give it a break for a couple months and then go back to it and see where I'm at. Then I do the same with the continuous glucose monitor. And, again, I was shocked the first time I wear it how much stress affected my glucose levels. It wasn't food.
Mm.
This is really unusual. I thought it was all food driven. It was like how stressed I was. And it's actually, quite different to what my aura is telling me, because that gives me feedback on my stress as well. But I think that these metrics that are available to us, and then also then I would take nutrition that would then I would see how they would affect over time. Like you can see how your sleep quality improves out over taking something for your sleep. And then you can see your glucose measures be affected by supplementing with a berberine and fasting and so forth. So I measure things as best as I can myself, but it's very difficult to do that as timely with a kind of the setup we have here in Australia. We have a very good system of care. It's Medicare. But if you're prepared to spend proactively on your health, it's a very difficult place to do that,
Mm.
because doctors get a hard time if they do too many blood tests for measuring things like vitamin
Yeah.
D, which should be doing that. And so if they're doing that and overloading the system that's set up to deal with chronic disease, they start to get pressures on themselves. So it's about setting up I kind of go and do every 2 years, and probably should be doing it more often. I go to the National Institute of Integrated Medicine. They do great, full comprehensive medical test on every element. They do MRIs, see how I'm breathing, how I'm kind of how my heart's going, the age of it, all of these measures, my eyes, ears, bloods, and so that is the car service that we should all be doing for ourselves.
Mm.
And every car's different. Everyone is different. And as I say, stress was a bigger precursor. Then I've got other friends that have seen that food's a bigger. So I think the importance is the individual approach and informing ourselves as best as we can. Like we're prepared to invest in supplements, we need to invest in the measurement and checking our blood pressure, doing these things. They're things we can do ourselves and should do regularly and monitor how we're adjusting and then also how we feel. And getting bloods every 6 months isn't too much of a challenge. You can see whether your liver's coping with supplements. The great thing about supplements is generally when you stop them, or in most 99% of cases, if it's causing an issue, it'll correct itself because they're not like drugs and creating long-term damage in the system. So it goes back to your point of getting this regular measurement in place and tailoring a program that works for you and you feel at your best.
I love that you mentioned, the Medicare system being, so focused on, reacting to things and, focus on treating chronic disease. And it's really doesn't have like the space to go and invest in prevention. But, there is awesome papers that have also shown that, by increasing the health spend, and that's just like by 1 year, you could increase the GDP of a whole nation by 1%, so it's so counterintuitive. And I guess that brings really well to what we're trying to do here with the 5x5 initiative, which is, to increase at least 5 years of health, to increase the GDP of Australia and potentially, go globally in the next 5 years. So I guess I have a question for you. If you were the chief builder of this initiative, or, you had like a very power to do whatever you wanted, where would you deploy your first investment to move the needles and the products like to prevention, to focusing on extending the health span rather than just reacting to all of those diseases later on?
It's a great question. I would have a minister focused in government on happiness and culture, and so someone that has measures of people in workplaces. So have workplaces incentivized to provide better cultures, better places to be. If we're happy at work in our best waking hours, or if you feel good about it, our society's happier. So offer tax incentives to companies that do create these, better environments to work in, and then we're going to have a much happier society, less stress, less anxiety, more purpose, more innovation, more openness to do things, take risk, but risk with consideration, so we get better outcomes. So for me, there's that, and then the focus on kind of this other area of happiness is kind of as we age too, supporting people through that process and championing people of age, rather than it becoming something that's a challenge. Really, honouring these people as they age, as leaders, as elders, and respecting that. And going back to a lot of these traditions that have happened in community for a long time, and why shouldn't we have very successful people that at a point where they're retired and so forth, contributing to kind of how these things are shaped, and how we consider health span and continue to improve it. So. And then the other side of that is having children involved too, and the freshness and the rawness and the openness that we all have had at one stage and point. So that sort of collaboration up and down the scale of generations that happens, and giving people a shared voice, an open voice, and having someone that's in charge of that in government, and it being a whole area and department, like we have a Minister of Defence. Some nations call it Minister of War these days, but why wouldn't we have a Ministry of Happiness? Yeah, and aren't we all here looking for connection and love, and that fundamentally binds us all? And why not have a big chunk of government focused on that? I think that's how we'll get our 5 years.
It's interesting the correlation between, if we look at some of the data perhaps coming out of, say, Japan, which is often regarded as a canary in the coal mine for an aging sort of society, and what does it mean to keep somebody engaged, not working longer, engaged longer? Because the minute they lose the engagement, effectively, there's a very, very quick decline where they don't feel like they actually add value. that you're like doing them a favor by looking after them. And I'm sort of 50 plus now, and for me, you start to think about, well, how do you continue to add value or be or feel valued on at a constant area. So the book spends a lot of time talking about sort of culture and how you get the right culture. And if you're not measuring happiness, how do you know if you're happy, right? Or how do you know? And I think the Buddhist monks will say it's actually not just happiness; it's contentment. It's contentment about where you actually are. So I could be content with a book from the library, or I could be content with a Kindle, or whatever. Just being content in that space. So my question for you is, how do we make this work at scale? Radek, I don't know of anybody better that has been sort of, excuse the language, but hit in the face with the consumer reality of distribution through the existing sort of retailers in this space, and having your various regulators looking at you tooth and comb for everything you're actually doing around your therapeutics. Now the gloves are off, right? You're not beholden to anyone, right? You know what needs to happen in this area. How do we distribute this? How do we do this? And I know you're doing a lot of that with Wanderlust at the moment as well. Is how do we do this? It's not something you do to somebody. It's a movement that comes from the inside out.
Yeah, I think even the fact that when you ask that question, you talk to how you feel as a 50-year-old, that you're not at the peak of your powers, and that our society makes you feel like that you think that you're kind of starting to get over the hill. That's absolutely crazy. You're halfway there on this wonderful journey we're on. We brought Jane Fonda out to Australia as part of Wanderlust, and she spoke. She's 87, and she spoke without script for an hour and a half each night, as passionately about her life and cause, inspired that whole audience beyond any means. I had so many people walk up to me from all ages, tell me how much it moved them. And she talked about that she was, in the best third of her life from her 60s onwards.
Yes.
And so, this whole notion that age is a negative is just this craziness. Yes, there are some challenges that come up, but I'm telling you now that we had more challenges through our youth, and we had more challenges through that middle point. We are in more control than we've ever been, and in a better state than we could be. And it's just our awareness. And unfortunately, we focus our awareness towards the negatives and concern ourselves with that negative too much, and it gets in the way. And I'm one that needs to manage it all the time. I need to make sure I meditate. I get on top of that kind of voice in our head that, if it was anyone else that was speaking to me like my mind speaks to me, you wouldn't have them in your life. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous how much of a hard time this person gives to me. So having a process where you're, taking time to be focused on the present, not thinking about what you're going to achieve in 10 days' time, or the stress of what might happen if you don't do something, and thinking about what we're doing right now and being as present as we possibly can. So introducing the modality of meditation at that Jane Fonda inspiring conversation. We did a 30-minute guided meditation with 9,000 people sitting in an auditorium. Hold on, hey? And it came through with resounding positive feedback. We had music, we built it beautifully, created a safe space, and we introduced the concept of meditation. Now, it wasn't for absolutely everyone there, but for those that it resonated with, hopefully they explore that and they get on top of this mind thing, which is, the number one precursor. We brush our teeth every day. We shower every day. It's madness. We're not thinking about what we're doing for our minds. And so, those are things that we're really inspired by. It's not the supplements, nutrition's one part, mindfulness and movement. Those are the three pillars. And any way we can democratize the access to that, I think that's when we're going to see big shifts in change. And we're seeing that, as we've grown up, these conversations have become more and more mainstream. And this next gen, you talk to anyone about how much more sensible children are, kids are, teenagers are today than what we grew up, with binge drink, the lack of knowledge we had around what we do now have, and the conversations that people are having at a much younger age about their health is so inspiring. So I can't wait to see how, things change for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love the meditation side of things, and it has changed so much of my life. I was never someone that used to do meditation or anything like that, and I've been introduced to it very later, much later, in life, and just focusing like in one thing that I'm grateful for every day, and just writing it down, like it just shifts the whole entire thing, and like it makes me aware of how much I have achieved so far rather than focusing in everything else that might be going wrong. And it really does make such a difference. And yeah, I love that. So yeah. Anyway, Mike, you had another question just to.
I was just going to say what you're doing so well is basically articulating that the word supplement is exactly what it is. It's a supplement. It's something you put together with everything else. And if I understand you correctly, is when you suddenly realize that you can't basically supplement your way out of this challenge. You can't just take all this sort of stuff and then realize that's good. It's not basically going to happen. So the fact that you're tapping the corporations, the fact that we're talking about the super funds doing things around preventative health, where what we're trying to do is really mix the practical distribution reality of what it is you're talking about doing. Because okay, I'm a CFO of a large a health, let's call it a health fund. I either increase my fees or reduce the care that I can provide for people on the existing funds, right? But if you tell me that I put I can take some supplements, I can do some movement, and I can do some yoga and whatever, and then maybe 10, 20, 30 years down the track, I might claim a little bit less.
And the person's going to feel happier. And so just simple things. And just back to Max, so you said beautifully that notion of gratitude. I mean, there's just so many opportunities to take a moment and express gratitude for what we have. I mean, how lucky are we growing up in this country? It's such a privilege of being in this country. And so we're very lucky. Yeah, we could be somewhere else and be very, very difficult. And so it's just an easy thing to just reinforce that blessing we have. Every time I take the dog out every night for a wee, and I do that in bare feet. I stand on grass and I take a moment, I look up and I just say, thank you for where I am. This is incredible. And I've switched something that I used to kind of frustrate me, having to go out and take the dog out. It's just changing that intention. So going back to, that intention and a health fund, it's kind of the intention of why they do it. And how if they really care about the people that they are working with, really got to think about those pillars I talked to: nutrition, mindfulness, and movement. And how are they helping people improve their health span by encouraging, through the methods of, rather than just reacting. And it's been sad to see a lot of these kind of proactive modalities have been taken out of budgets for private health insurance and so forth, where people could do a lot of these preventative things, modalities that have been around a long time, but because of budget cuts, they're taken away, and it's very short-sighted. Long term, it's not going to be helpful for us.
And I guess the bottom right line is you shouldn't be doing this because of that. But the benefits to you, it's not just the economic. Forget the economic one. Take that one completely out of the equation, right? You're doing it because, as you say, you're content in that moment. That's actually what you need at that particular moment in time. You're not doing it because I'm going to get a movie voucher from doing 10,000 steps today from my insurance company. I mean, that's almost like a trivial, it's not something that's done to you. It's something you're a part of. Our aim is to make sure that what you're a part of is open source. It's accessible to everyone. You can do the right exercises right now with nothing. You don't need to go to an expensive gym. You can eat these things relatively straightforward in a normal society if you have access to this stuff, or avoid this bad stuff, right? You make that choice, right? You can make that choice up to point. So My question around specifically around, say, something like a supplement, is there an area where you can do too much of a perceived good thing? Is there something that's too much? Can you do too much? There was a question. I saw one of your quotes. I think it was when we were talking about finance. He goes, "You can't meditate your way out of this financial problem. Right? You need to." And then I think your answer to that was, "Actually, we did." Right. So because we got the team together, right? Because what are you going to do around it?
Yeah. And I think that anyone that says that they don't have the time to meditate, well, that you actually need to time to meditate if you don't. I'm sorry to tell you. And so find something that agrees with you and that connects with you. But, I think that when it goes back to that simple recommendation that we get quite regularly is do everything in moderation. Yeah, don't become extreme, and don't let it become to a point where you're limiting your ability to have social adhesion, but positive social adhesion. You don't want to be just doing it for negative reasons. But you can have overkill. Hence why I make sure that the Aura Ring is 4 weeks. It's not every day of the year, because it does become addictive. That gamifying that. Oh, how much stress did I have then, and where was I at there, and what was my heart rate like last night to sleep? What scores it given me? It's an interesting input, but don't make it your life. It's a read, and it's not the only, and it's not even proven as a modality to extend our life, because it hasn't been around long enough to validate its position. So, but there are very useful measures there that are useful. So I think just keeping moderation in things, but sometimes you do need to bring things to an extreme, like do an extended fast to that you build up to get weight management into control, or to get your glucose measures right. We know a whole lot more about this science, and David Sinclair will talk to that at Wellspring, being one of the pioneers of that. So you can go and find out, where you perhaps need to be a bit more extreme to get a better outcome by listening to the real leaders, the scientists in these areas, and then getting things into shape, and then you can sort of fall into a more moderate program. But so extremism is the thing you've got to watch out for. Pretty much the same everything in life, eh?
You've been incredibly generous with your time, and
I have one final question, and then we can wrap it up.
Sure.
How about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you also have a fund which is called the Light Warrior, and I know that there is a lot of things that you looking into health span and new investments. Maybe just give us a little bit of a sneak peek of like what is coming up, what is next, and what are the things that you're excited about, and that you've been able now to be in a position to invest on.
Yeah, so I think that the privileged position I'm in as a result of the Swisse exit, and I'm also 10 years now after that happening, and really over a 10-year cycle, you have things work out and not work out, and the biggest challenge with that cycle is everything at the start doesn't work out. The first 3 years are really challenging, so because all your bad investments go bad first, and your good ones aren't going great, because it takes a long time to get them in shape. So it's been incredibly humbling and great for me to go through this process of failure and understand that, where my superpowers are and what I know a little bit better than most. And that is in the kind of health and wellness space. And so, but it's consumer products, it's end products, and it's healthy products, and whether it be supplements, whether it be events that inspire people for health, whether it be a digital content business that we've got, Commune, which is offering people like Wim Hof, Marianne Williamson, and courses with them, so people can go to our event, then go deeper with those people and explore their development further, but at a really cost-effective way, through to healthy snacking like Loco Love, which is, it's dairy, egg free, and all raw ingredients.
Amazing chocolate, by the way. Love it. Amazing. So
Here
good.
too, our pistachio milk praline, which is about to come out, just come off the line today. So very excited about that with tremella, so a wonderful herb. That
I'm gonna come back with a bag full of chocolate back to Melbourne when I go to the Gold Coast. I just
Yeah.
I was
We're going to
really
bring you to
taken
the
by it. It
chocolate
was
factory.
amazing.
You're going to come and check it out.
Yes.
This is chocolate with inulin in it, and maple sugar rather than raw sugar. So those are sorry, not raw sugar, processed sugar, white sugars. So just incredible stuff, and you can make these healthier versions of snacks that we all love and like to indulge in, but can really just assist people in being healthier and making it easier for us to get to that point. So I'm obsessed by that. We've got a whole lot more in that space that I can't talk about right now. Unfortunately, there's a heap in the innovation space that we will be able to talk about in the near future. But I wish I could talk more about it.
That's okay.
No,
Thank you
I think
so
it's
much,
fair to
Radek.
say we trust. I think we trust your motivation. When your parents sat you down and said you need to do some Japanese writing combined with some art training and some
Yoga.
and it's all based on science. I think in this age for me it's trust. I'd rather trust the science, and if it does you no harm doing this, then what's the problem, right? But so don't spend all this time trying to disprove me. Spend more time on saying, well, actually, does it do any harm if I go to dancing lessons and acting lessons and drink coffee? And I'll tell you what I'm going to do tonight, Radek, is I took my grass out during COVID lockdown number 5 in Melbourne. I took it out, and I do take the dog out every night, my 13-year-old dog.
Yeah.
So I have no grass, but I have a rock garden. So tonight, Radek, I promise you, I'm going to take my little dog who's asleep upstairs. I'm going to take her outside, and I'm going to make sure that all the lights stay off, and I'm going to look up, and I'm going to think of you and say, I'm thankful for the place that I'm actually in. And because you're right, our human tendency is to probably focus on the things that aren't there rather than focusing and being thankful at that point in time. So if nothing else, you've given both, hopefully, Maxime and I, the ability to be calm at this point in time, and by bringing these people in the room and these events. And if people want more information about your events, can they just go to Wanderlust and hit the website? And I know you've got an event coming up really, really shortly, and mix those pillars of nutrition, mindfulness, and movement at scale. So thank you so much. And Maxu, thank you for being available. I know you're in Boston and you're a little bit jerky. We think you're a real person, not an avatar. We don't know. We think you're
I'm not an AI.
We're pretty sure. So thank you so for being up at 3:00 in the morning Boston time.
That's
Incredible.
That's all good. It's my pleasure. Yeah.